Josh Rosner had also begun complaining to the Fed about subprime mortgage, but he had left his job at a mainstream Wall Street investment bank and joined a small independent research firm. Once a hook believer in the new subprime companies, he had become deeply critical of team companies he had investment his clients' money in had gone out of business. He had watched the lawsuit pile up over their semi-business practice. I intentionally help kill my clients. He says today, I was so desperate. Rosner had a foreboding that went well beyond that of most subprime critics. Graham Leach worried about subprime lending because it took advantage of unsophisticated buyers and after cost people their homes. But Rosner saw the, the linking of borrower and lender could have more far-reaching consequences. Well contacted in Washington, he began showing up at the Fed to express his concern. Fed officials would respond by saying that it wasn't their job to determine who should or shouldn't get a mortgage. It say, but it is the Fed's job to ensure that the system is stable. Rosner recalls, there were two essential reasons for Rosner. First, the first was that his close reading of the data showed that most of this frantic mortgage lending really had nothing to do with getting people into homes, since the vast majority of subprime loans were refinancings. That was true of the prime market as well. A little noticeable Freddie Mac study noted that more that percent of homeowners who refinanced in the last 3 months had taken out mortgage at less 5% higher than the ones they retired. They were using their homes as piggy banks. Refinancing offers the potential to increase the absolute debt burden of the average USA household without materially reducing other consumer debts. Rosner wrote at the time, surely he thought all this additional consumer debt was legally to endeavor. The second reason for Rosner's fears was that he could also see from the data that Prover and Faber home buyers were bidding down 20%, which had long been the standard to get a mortgage. By 1999, in fact, more of mortgage and down payments of less than 10%. Angelo Mosilo, who was become an increasingly prominent figure in the mortgage industry, believed passionately that big down payments prevent otherwise capable borrowers from being able to own a home. For much of his career, he had found to be able to originate mortgage with little or no down payments, and mostly he owned one. Wall Street not regularly securitized loans with down payments of 10% or, or less, and even Fannie and Freddie were allowed to buy low down payment mortgage. although they recommend a private insurer to absorb some of the risk. But Rosner picked up on yet another little notice study, this one by Fannie Mae, showing that low-down payment loans triggers credit losses. Put simply, a homeowner with little or no equity has little or no reason to maintain his/her obligations. Rosner wrote, having equity in one's home was much more than a barrier keeping people from buying a home. He came to believe it was to get the homeownership down payments more than any single thing meant that you were a homegoer. Rosser published research piece that summed up his thinking until a home without equity is just a rental with debt. No one seemed to take much notice. He was working from home one day when the phone rang. On the other end was an elderly man. "I just read your paper and want to discuss it with you, but I can't hear very well on the phone," he said. Would you be able to sit down with me in person?" "Sure," Rosner responded politely. "Are you in the city?" "I am in Lexington, Massachusetts." The caller explained. Rosner, again being polite, said he'd call when he was next headed to Boston for meetings and asked for the man's name. "My name is Charles Kindleberger," the caller replied. Kindleberger was the author of Manias, Panics, and Crashes, which documented market crises throughout the age and was widely viewed as a classic. Rosner had long admired it. The next morning, Rosner flew to Boston and spent the day with Kindleberger, who was 91. Kindleberger told Rosner that in the publish another edition of Manias, Panics, and Crashes, he would use a home without equity as the final chapter. There was at least one bank regulator in Washington during this era who tried to do something to curb subprime lending abuse. Her name was Donna Tonoe, and from 1998 to 101, she was the chair of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Her concern stemmed from the simple fact that subprime lenders were shutting down. Those lenders were banks. It was the which insured deposits for the federal government that had to pick up the piece. Townend's solution, an obvious one, really was for the subprime companies to hold more capital against those loans. Subprime lenders, she said during one congressional hearing, are 20 times more likely than other banks to be on the agency's problem list and accounted for 6 of the last 11 failures. Violet, she went even further, arguing that banking regulators need to serve the money chain that replenishes the capital of predatory lenders and allures them to stay in business. She was talking about Wall Street's purchase and securitization of subprime loans. The FDIC even issued draft guidelines instructing banks on how to avoid purchasing predatory loans for their securitization. The industry was apoplectic. About the draft winner Patricia Alberto, an executive at JP Morgan, wrote a letter in protest. The regulatory agencies and the public, in their quest to eradicate predatory lending, have ensured with the lines that have the effect of imposing a large portion of the responsibility for ferrying out and eliminating predatory lending by others to the large bank in the industry because they are in a position to provide liquidity to the marketplace, she said. Well, yes, that's what exactly what Tony was trying to do. When Tono testified before the House Banking Committee, defending her plan to increase the capital that had to be held for Supreme Lands, Representative Caroline Marloni, a Democrat from New York, replied boldly, I am concerned that adopting any arbitrarily high capital standard for supreme lending will unnecessarily reduce the number of supreme lenders. In early, the banking regulators did issue guidance requiring institutions with heavy concentrations of subprime loans to hold more capital against those loans, but the definition of what constitutes subprime lending was vague and guidance was only guidance which lenders could adopt or ignore as they saw fit, depending on how zealously the regulator is enforced it. No anti-depredatory lending bill was ever passed. No structures against most of the practice were ever enforced. No serious effort was ever made to make financial institutions pay more attention to the loans they were bullying and securitizing. Yet even the guidance has weak as it was met with a firestorm of criticism. John Ritchie, a new member of the FDIC board, told the American banker that the regulators were in the wrong and that we should have done it right the first time. He clarified that doing it right meant consulting with the banking industry. James Giller, who became the head of the Office of Trade Supervision, would later say of his agency, our goal is to allow trades to operate with a made breadth of freedom from regulatory intrusion. A few years later, a picture was taken of Guillermo and Rach with the representatives of three bank lobbying groups. They were taking a chainsaw to the red tape of exclusive regulation. Rach replaced Guillermo has the direction of the OTS. And yet, even though the bank supervisor refuses to take steps to curb supreme lending, the smaller ones, the Office of the Controller of the Currency in particular, also didn't want its institution to make these loans via the examination process, which isn't public, quickly started making life difficult for any national bank that had a big supreme business early on. In August, Bank of America Honor said it was selling its 96 supreme lending branches, and 4 years later, in a decision that every bank noticed, the forced Laredo National Bank in Texas to make restitution to every borrower who had gotten a lot without the bank taking care to actually consider credit times, ran every national bank out of the business, say a former Treasury official. Admiral thought this effort may have seemed it was both problematic and a little perverse because the effort was not what matched by the Office of Dirt Supervision. Dirt began grabbing the supreme market share. The big banks were abandoning supreme lending also began to migrate into state-regulated institutions, whereas Grambling once put it, federal regulators have to an obvious way to monitor the lending behavior of independent mortgage companies. And one other thing what they forgot was that even if the big banks were no longer making the majority of supreme loans, those loans were still finding their way into the banking system. All the big banks were also in the securities business, and they were all making certain securities subprime loans originated by others, and big and small banks alike continued to hold mortgage banking securities on their balance sheets, but no one, not the banking supervisor, nor the Securities and Exchange Commission, nor the Federal Reserve, was bothering to track this. That risk was supposed to be gone.